Hello.
Hello, hello.
Last one in the office, Martin.
Yep,
Is
I
it
think I'm
far?
the
Is it
I'm
far from
the
home?
it's very close. 10 minutes by bike. You can bike there.
Ooh, now you have to ride in this cold. You have to bike there.
There is no bad weather, only bad clothes.
I used to hear that so often. Like my hometown in England, Manchester, is extremely rainy and cold and wet. So very, very familiar with that saying.
Yeah, they say that my kids go to a forest school that meets outside all day, and they that's what they say as well. Like, just, dress in layers. It'll be fine. 20 degrees. It's fine.
Hi guys. Hello.
Hey, hey.
Ah, and Mark, welcome to the TSC.
Thank you. Yes. Very excited.
I'm excited. I think we've reached like AI has arrived because I can now just ask it to add me to the agenda for today's working group meeting, and it just did it. It's amazing. Or to the attendees.
Yeah, that's AGI now. So it's the end.
Are we talking about
So
AGI or GraphQL or both? What's going on?
I was
We'll
saying,
see.
yeah, my agent is able to just add me to the attendees for the working group meeting today. I was like, I think it's arrived. Like that's to me, that's the bar.
Is
Yeah.
this
Love
like,
that.
is this with your Claude bot set up or something?
It was just Cloud Code running locally.
Mm. So the
Straight.
the other question is, can it also show us the agenda so that we are not confused when we have to introduce ourselves in just a few seconds, in order of the attendees, and then
I mean that's basically there as an AV check. Most times it goes smoothly, but 1 out of 3 times someone's like microphone is broken or something, or they're not paying attention. So let's see, how many people we got? We got 11 people. What's our agenda say? Why does my agenda always disappear on me? Maybe if I can
It,
get my
it
agent
also
to
says 11
not close my
people.
tabs.
I'm
Oh
still
man.
working on the pull request. So there's one more coming.
You got one more coming
Yeah,
of
me myself.
agenda. Oh, yourself. You gotta do it Steven's way and
And
have a
Yakov
have a
is
bot do it
on,
for you.
Just uses the GitHub CLI, clone, push a branch, make a PR.
yeah, Yakov is on the agenda but not attending.
Uh, Not attending as in just not here yet, maybe.
No, no,
He's
he might
messaged.
pop by. He's got a conflict.
I just missed that message. Okay, that's fine. All right. Well, in that case, I think we've got ourselves a quorum and we will get started. I'm trying to get my windows side by side so I stop flipping desktops back and forth to see all your faces and see the agenda. Okay, there we go. Welcome, everybody. It's hard to believe that it's already February. As we are all here, we of course agree to the spec agreement, participation guidelines, contribution guide, code of conduct, and of course, a reminder that these are all recorded. We stick them on YouTube. Occasionally, one of them goes viral and gets 12 views, but we do run them through LLM tools to get note summaries. So just in case we wanted to make sure everyone is aware of that, we will do the introductions, everyone's name and where you're from. And we will do that in order that is listed in the agenda doc. And my name conveniently is on top. So hello, everybody. I'm Lee.
Hello, I'm Martin.
Hello, I'm Emily.
Where you're next, I think.
Sorry, I was want to make sure. Yeah, I'm Koi.
Hey everyone, I'm Mark.
Hey folks, I'm Benji.
Hey, Benoit from Apollo.
Hey, Pascal from Chilicon.
Hi, I'm Matt.
I'm Stephen.
And I'm Michael.
Last on the list. All right. Thank you, everybody. We have a pretty busy agenda. Everything is marked as like 2 to 10 minutes, which I think is a lie. So I will let everyone's agenda items go slightly longer than what they're listed for, because if we did that, we would be done wildly ahead of schedule, and I don't think that's what's going to happen. But we've got plenty of things to look through. A quick read through before we get started. We've got TSC election results I'm happy to talk through. We're going to talk about grant availability, incremental delivery, field extensions, fragments are not for reuse, some updates from the AI working group, that'll be exciting, and the nullability working group updates. Anything not already on this list that we want to talk about?
Yeah, I meant to submit a pull request for this, but I totally forgot. The Golden Path, I've set up a working group. I'll be posting it to the relevant GitHub issue shortly. But it will be next week, same time as this, to get us started kicking that process off.
Okay. If you want to spend another minute or two talking about that, toss something on the end of the agenda. We'll make sure we get time for it.
I was also going to say, like, if at the end there's still time, I was interested in carrying on the conversation from the last working group meeting where someone brought up the idea of adding some wording to the spec to clarify the difference between like produced server schemas and schemas that you as a human write. And I did some thinking on that, and I think the same could also be true of query. So I just kind of wanted to bring that up again if there was time. Yeah.
Cool. That could be a really interesting discussion. Yeah, feel free to go ahead and edit the agenda file. I'll do a couple reloads as we go, so that we pick those up. Okay, I will give us 2 updates, one of which got posted in the chat already by Benji, but quick update to everybody that we now have a whole bunch of details around GraphQL Conf. In particular, we are in the last week for CFPs, so anyone here that would like to talk about GraphQL stuff at GraphQL Conf, please make sure that you send your idea over into the RFP. You can find links from the conference website. And we're super excited to put this one together. It's going to be in early May, so it's going to be a bit of a time shift from the one we did last time. If it feels like, didn't we just do GraphQL Conf? Yes, we're going to do like 2 in less than a year apart from each other. But I think this one's going to be really fun. And then also we wrapped up our TSC election results. So congrats, Mark and Yakov, for being included into the TSC. Just a quick reminder for folks that are not in the TSC, what the TSC's job is. TSC basically just gives you more responsibilities. You get access control to the repos, so you become one of a handful of folks who are accountable to make sure that all of our technical projects are alive and healthy. And as a result, also get to share a little bit of the burden of making that happen. We do sort of an interesting thing where we have our fixed set of TSC members, and then we also have this semi-official group called the TSC alumni basically anytime someone has been in the TSC, they're allowed to stick around afterwards for as long as they like. So we've had a handful of folks depart the TSC as Mark and Yakov join, but they now join our distinguished alumni group. So thanks y'all for those who voted and nominated themselves. And yeah, welcome Mark in particular, who's here on the call, and Yakov, who hopefully will drop in later.
Yakov is here, I
Oh, he's
think.
here now.
At least there's a call.
Yeah, I see your square. You missed our intros, but I just called you out by name. So but when you're available to come to your microphone, introduce yourself.
Hi, very excited to be here.
Thanks. I assume you're multitasking, Yakov, so I'll let you keep doing that. Okay, I'm gonna hand it to Benji actually to talk about grant availability since he's helping us run that program. Benji, go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is just a reminder that we have a grant program that is there to support basically any work on any of the GraphQL Foundation's projects. So as a rough guide to that, that's basically anything that is on GitHub under the GraphQL organization. So if you want to contribute to the website, if you want to contribute to the reference implementation, to the specification, to the working groups, whatever it may be, if you want to contribute to that, but you can't because of lack of time and some financial backing would help you with that, then please submit an application. And if the TSC agree that that is a worthwhile activity to do, then hopefully we can fund that for you. And for the rest of us as well, because obviously it's for us too. We would like to keep advancing the GraphQL technologies together. Yeah.
Benji, next item is also yours. Incremental delivery. Quick update.
Yes. Rob has asked me, he's not available to be here today, but he's saying that we will be discussing on the what do we call it? Like the follow-up meeting, the mid-month
Secondary
meeting. The secondary meeting, that's the
overflow.
word I was looking for. Thank you, Lee. So the secondary meeting is where the incremental delivery is going to be discussed this month. So we would really appreciate some help there reviewing the pull request. We're splitting the massive pull request that is incremental delivery into smaller pieces and reviewing them bit by bit. So help doing that review would be greatly appreciated. So if you can help with that, please attend the secondary meeting to do so. Also, Lee, taking us back a couple of ticks on the agenda, there is a pull request up for updating the TSC on the GraphQL TSC document. I have linked it in the chat. If we can get that merged, that would be great.
Oh, thank you for doing that. That was totally on me for missing that. I think I got 80% of all the other TSC stuff fixed. This one is an easy merge. All right. Field extensions. Emily and Martine, hand it to you both.
Emily, do you want to take that one?
Sure. So I've updated the spec and have a PR for field extensions. It was kind of hard to do it with schema coordinates because of the parser. So I opted for the easier solution where we just build it into the type extensions or object extensions and interface exceptions. So I have the rough GraphQL PR and then spec edits outlining how it works. Yeah.
What is the latest here, or I see a little note here that we want to aim for RC1, but what would be the most helpful thing to look at for us to figure that out?
I probably the spec would be the best. So we just like agree on like semantics and like syntax and stuff, and like how it works. Because I think there's like some discussion about descriptions and like if we can like extend those or if like it has to match, and if there's nothing, can we override it? And arguments, default arguments. I think those were like our main concerns, right, Martin?
Yeah, basically, yeah, exactly. I think last time the concern was about schema coordinates, so this is a whole new take where it merges everything. But yeah, I don't have much to add, except there is also an Apollo Kotlin implementation. So there is now GraphQL JS, Apollo Kotlin, and spec edits. And yeah, on descriptions and default values, I mean, the directives are the easy ones because, well, and directive fields, a lot of stuff is additive. Descriptions and default values are not additive, like they're not lists. So the decision we took with Emily is to only allow merging them if they are exactly the same. Like if there was no previous value, you can add. But if there was a previous value, we check the previous value. And if it's not the same, we make a validation error. I think this is the main question we had.
Yeah, I left a comment, but because I've been working a lot in how schemas merge, uh, the the one big thing here is you want to be able to have an extension that is very, very minimal, that like doesn't include a description at all, and still it should still merge with a field that maybe over time the description is being updated on the main field. It would really be an awful experience if you are required to keep that description in sync. Otherwise, the merging fails. And that's true for basically each subcomponent. Like it should be okay to not include it and have it merge properly.
Yeah, I think that GraphQL's implementation right now does like you don't have to add the description as well. It'll just like merge if you just add it. But you do have the possibility to add a new description if it has nothing. And then if you add a description, it has to match exactly.
Oh, I see. Either there is no description on the extension, or there is one, and if there is one, then it must be
Yeah.
equivalent.
Yes.
Basically, to avoid an ambiguity of if you had two different descriptions, like, but then we would have to specify what's the merge strategy. Like, does one
Right.
win, or do they concat, or something like that?
Yeah.
That seems like a reasonable place to start. I can imagine us in the future wanting to tweak things, but I'm always a fan of starting with the um, sort of most conservative approach because it gives us room to loosen it in the way that we want.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess maybe the biggest question here is like a pragmatic one of like, what is the set of reasons why we expect people will use this? And how do we make sure it's very ergonomic for those use cases? Um, and for the ones that we think are less likely to be the case, how do we, you know, minimize possible
I,
confusion or ambiguity?
I have one use case, which is nullability. We want client developers to extend some fields with at semantic non-null. And this is one of the big use cases. We do have a bunch of other ones for codegen, for an example, to apply a directive that modifies a codegen for a given field. But every time it's mostly about directives. And I think description was mentioned last time for AI. Like you want to add descriptions to your types and fields, or do I forget? I think these were the two main use cases.
It is
Oh,
nice
interesting.
for AI specifically, it's nice to be able to split the descriptions out into a separate thing because like having small context for initial view and then being able to expand context. is nice.
Yeah, I
Right.
think this could also be pretty useful for composite schemas. Because we have a concept of or at least we leave it open in the specification so that you can do pre-processing of the schema. I guess the merging, if this merge behavior is defined, then you can at least add some directives for it as an extension.
The
So the
syntax,
primary, sorry, go ahead, Benji.
the syntax that's proposed for this currently makes it look like you can change the field type. Is that something that we want to potentially support in future?
No, I don't think you should be able to change the field type.
So
One,
I
at the moment, one of the concerns that I have is if you were to extend a schema in multiple places, there's no way at the moment to know that there's a conflict between those with this proposed syntax. Because it would look like one of them is adding the ID string field and one of them is adding the ID string deprecated, and maybe another one is adding ID string with another directive, and we are essentially doing a merge. But it might be that those things ultimately actually mean different things. Um, yeah, ID is obviously not a great example of a conflict that could happen here, but there are other fields that you might add with two different meanings but the same field name and not realize that essentially you're giving them the same field. The way that extensions typically work in GraphQL is additive. So we always just add something. We never really merge things. And this looks more like a merge than an add, and I think that adds a lot of complexity. So I'd rather see a syntax that is much more explicitly like we are adding directives to this field that already exists, rather than reproducing the field and adding a directive to it.
Yeah, you said better what I was going to get at, which is the clear intention here is to extend by adding directives. Um, and I don't have a strong feeling about the syntax specifically, but it does seem to me that we've maybe hit accidental complexity, having to specify like all the ways in which the syntax must match the extending document. Um, and I wonder if there's a way for us to elide most of that by having a different way about it. I don't have a good suggestion exactly how to do that, but I am imagining a plausibly painful scenario where, you know, if you have like a handful of these stacked up, so maybe imagine a scenario where you have a server schema and a client extension, and the server decides that, you know, I'm going to make a plausibly safe breaking change. They change the name of a return type, or they add an argument. That's actually probably one that is technically a safe schema change to make. They've added a new argument that's optional. So all existing clients continue to work, but now there's this new field that's been added. Um, and because in our extension, you know, we've written out, we want to extend this field. Here's our arguments on that field. Here's the directive I'm adding. Because that new optional argument doesn't exist yet, like the merge will fail because it'll fail this, are the arguments the same check, which would be kind of annoying because, of course, the arguments have nothing to do with the purpose, which is like all I wanted to do is add the directive. Anyway, I don't have a great suggestion of how to solve that problem, but maybe curious if that's something that resonates.
Am I supposed to direct? Can people?
Go for
I
it.
don't know how this goes. Okay, like Pascal.
And not only have to lower my hand, I actually also have to unmute myself. So to remember that. Regarding the changing of a field type, so I don't want to like make this any more complicated than it already is. but changing a field type would actually be something which would be super useful. Because I just think about you have a client which doesn't really understand scalars. I mean, there's no easier way to just have an extension file and say that, hey, this actually is an int and not whatever, or this is an array of ints and a list of ints instead of a point or something like this. But that's just a thought. Like this, there's different ways to solve this problem. It's not something that the community hasn't solved yet, but I do see that could be a use case for changing the type.
That's fair. Yeah. Yeah. Benji's suggestion makes sense too. Not sure if that should roll up in this one. Yeah. And Matt?
Yeah, so preview of talk I want to give at GraphQL Conf. But there's the purpose of the extend, I think, limiting it to like, hey, we want to be able to add information to the client is useful, but as soon as it becomes a merge, which it has now grown into, there's a lot of value. Pascal was hinting at this, but there's like a world in which you have basically modules describing what ends up being your resolver. And those modules might take in other modules and other resolvers and like compose them up and then expose schema based off of that. And it is even possible to be in a situation where you can't, like the dependency chain can't properly compose, like you can't depend on both module A and its dependent because they have clashing schema definitions. But the like what I think is needed for that class of problem, which I think is pretty similar actually to this, is we need basically just an SDL merge operation, which at that point, what we're talking about is not necessarily like, oh, how do we do extend? But instead, what are the rules when you encounter like an SDL with a nullable field and an SDL with that same field where it's required, or at semantic non-null, and how do they merge together? And this is almost something that it might be easier to do in the gaps, in Benji's new gaps specification, where like the rules around, okay, extend means this. And when we're merging, hey, extend can't handle extending things that already exist. So everything must match or whatever. And merge means this. And like override or alter means that. And like what are the fundamental schema like modification or unioning or like setting operations? And I think that this is valuable enough that it belongs maybe not in the spec, but as a like set of tools that we build up and have a specification for how we like given you input these two schemas, this is guaranteed to be what you get out. But that's just like, and it would be very easy to iterate on that in the gaps, as opposed to trying really hard to get the extend like perfect for the spec.
Yeah, that's fair. Pascal?
Yeah, so additionally, on top of what Matt just said, there is in the GraphQL ecosystem already a quite known way how to merge types. And this is what essentially Federation is doing since a long time. But the rules would be very different from what we have described here. So it's just I can link I sent it into the chat. It's what the composite schema spec defines as the merge of output fields. And what the composite schema specification takes in account is exactly what you mentioned. What happens if you have collisions, or what happens if you have two optional arguments of two types? Do you want the overlap? Do you want to have no arguments in the schema? Do you want to have both arguments in the schema? And it really depends on the behavior. If you want to have a union, or you want to have a set, the overlap, and yeah. So it's a long discussion that we had in the composite schema spec. What means merging a type, right? It's a whole section of the specification.
Okay, thanks everyone. I'll like take this into consideration and talk to Martine about it and try and figure out what we should do from here. Thank you.
Nice progress. I think this is like very clearly RFC1, which is basically just a sign that this is a problem we've all agreed ought to be solved, which is you need the ability to annotate an existing schema with additional directives. And then there's just a sort of question of like, how do we reduce ambiguity while like maximizing explicitness on that particular value add? So we're still surfing around what the right possible path is, but I feel high conviction that this is certainly a problem we're solving. So RFC1, continue. Thank you for driving the discussion, Emily.
If we do the gap thing, we cannot choose extend, right? We have to come up with some kind of new syntax.
Maybe. I don't actually know, but it's possible.
I think we could use extend and just be like, hey, if you're using it for this purpose, we've extended the syntax essentially.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
All right.
good.
Awesome. Glad I gave us more than 2 minutes on that one. Okay. Martine, you got the next one for not fragment, not reuse.
Oh yes, that one. Where is the link? Well, it's just the pull request from Janet. I just want to make sure we do not lose it in translation somewhere. So question is just, is there anything that prevents us from merging this? Because every day we wait is another way people learn GraphQL the wrong way. We don't want that.
Great question. I'm not sure how this one got left behind. Maybe we can do just like a live look through this PR and see if there's any concerns, and then otherwise.
Yeah.
This is like, go ahead.
So sorry, I just want to provide the context. Last time when we discussed this, the biggest problem is what actually Benji commented on. Like, what do we mean by component, module? Like, all those things we need to like kind of describe and define what that means. And I think that was a really hard question, so it kind of got stuck there.
My point is, do we need to define this? I mean, is this new text worse than the current one? This is my main question. If it's not good, if it's worse than the current explanation, we should definitely rework it. If it goes in the good direction, I say we should merge it and iterate until we find better terms.
I'm good to merge and iterate, especially since we've got it's going in the draft, but we've got a little bit of room to iterate on the draft. I agree with with Benji's feedback for what it's worth. That rather than literally jumping to the word component, we should probably use something like, portion of UI or something that's more generic. Probably also just better gets the point across about what we're trying to say is the alignment here. But the concept that a user interface actually being sort of a hierarchical tree of like specific elements and sub-elements is a very old concept, not specific to React and shared across all current live front-end platforms. So I'm not worried about the general body of it, and I'm sure we can do a minor tweak to the copy after this, if everyone's okay with that.
I'd be okay with just applying Benji's suggestion as is and merging.
I'll do that. All that to say, we will remain open to iterative clarity edits, but broadly, this is right, so we'll just make it happen. Okay. Thank you for the reminder and digging this one up out of the weeds. I'm gonna get it merged now. Okie dokie. Kiwei, I'm very interested to hear our updates from the last couple of AI working group
Yes.
sessions.
So we had 3 AI working group sessions from last year to now, and I provided some of the helpful links there, but I actually want to start with the problems that this working group wants to solve. It started getting a lot more clear that there are 2 problems that we want to solve. One is coding problem. So basically, you're having a application that kind of uses GraphQL already, and you want to make sure those AI agents like a Cursor, Codex, or like Claude Code, they can write like good and valid like GraphQL fragments and operations. So that's the first bucket of questions that we want to solve. The next bucket of question is really kind of, okay, using GraphQL in the place or actually on top of MCP. And then so it's like kind of runtime, how do you use GraphQL to get data? So it's like already part of the application. That's like after the code. So with those 2 as the problems this working group wants to like solve, there are a couple of like proposals, pretty interesting proposals like out there. So I'm going, I will go like order by order. So the first one is actually semantic introspection, and I had a versus subschema, which I will talk about. So semantic introspection, actually proposed by dear Pascal here, is essentially an extension of our introspection, but provide the ability of like similarity search or semantic search. And then like from a very generic natural language, you can return like types definitions. And some of the important things I think is very interesting in that concept is, in addition to the type definition, you also return a path from the root. This is super helpful when you want to actually construct, later I'll talk about subschema, which we kind of hiddenly like introduce that concept. You want to construct all your dependency paths for the agent to be able to like reach from the root to that specific type that you're interested in. So please give it a read. I think there are some of the very interesting things. I would say one of the open question is, do we want to support pagination here? I've looked into a lot of the similarity search like implementation. I don't think any of those support pagination in like natively. But it doesn't prevent us to say, well, the introspection API should support pagination to some degree, right? And that's one of the things I think is we would like some feedback on. And I want to call out this behind this semantic introspection are a lot of people's work. Like we have Michael Watson trying to implement custom embeddings just using open source technology. And we have Thor, who kind of build a bunch of things on top of using semantic introspection to allow you to construct queries. So that is that. This one helps for, I would say, both use cases. It obviously helps when you want to write on fragment and operations in code. You could also try to do it on the fly, where like the agent wants to solve a user's problem, and it kind of is like building a plane while you're like flying. So it's a little bit chatty if you want to do it live, but you can do it. So that's where semantic introspection is. With that, I want to introduce a comparison, which is what we call the subschema idea. And the reason why we introduce this whole concept of subschema is really to solve you want to use GraphQL on top of MCP to help you solve problems. And the user-facing latency becomes a little bit more critical. Like, as I mentioned, this semantic introspection is very chatty. You go back and forth because it's very hard to get all of the correct types on the first try. So you keep on going back and the latency is very high. But if you can analyze your kind of current application features, understanding what the user might ask, you can actually take the time ahead of time to construct a subschema that is like smaller and more well-defined and usually has all the types that you need. So think about that as an optimization layer, if you will. That is basically our idea of subschema. Okay, I think I will pause there because there's a lot of anyone have questions or anything? Michael said we can get it less chatty. I want to learn how we do that.
Yeah. Pascal and me are constantly discussing this very problem. Also with the path to root is one thing, but there are a couple of things that we are at the moment experimenting with which the chattiness, like the interaction with LLM and actually the semantic introspection, can be reduced.
Yeah. All right. So these apart from these, I think Mark had a really important proposal for at mock that for the way I strongly resonate with it is I feel like today the way our engineers use agent to write code is they basically first tell the agent, write me that GraphQL operation or write me that fragment. And then they go and and then now that I have this fragment, please write me the UI. I think the more optimized approach is you start from the UI because your UI should define your data needs. And with the UI, you can actually achieve co-location. You can actually identify what are the fields you actually don't need, so you reduce overfetching. But people have told me no, we started with UI, with mocked data, and then figure out the GraphQL fragments after it. It's really hard because sometimes the model just left mock data behind, and it's just a mess after the UI trying to figure out what the GraphQL operation is. Instead, I would rather start with an operation that I figure out the operations first that I kind of know works, and then I generate my UI. With mock, we can potentially solve this problem because when the model is generating that the UI, it can also introduce this capability of supplying the mock data. So you make sure kind of your UI and your data dependency are working together without instead of splitting into two separate steps, it becomes one step. So I'm super excited about this proposal. I think Mark, if there's anything else you want to add, I will just add one thing. There's this small group of the Relay and Meta Mobile GraphQL and Mark. I forgot. Maybe Uri was also in there.
There was someone from there's someone from Airbnb commenting on it, and then
I see.
we brought someone along from another company whose name I forget right now. But yeah, there's a bunch of people interested in this, and I guess we'll probably try and have that style of meeting again, maybe just at the next working group meeting.
Yeah. I would say the current split is we want to have this mock capability to be client-centric view, which means you actually mock at maybe fragment level, right? Or the cosi level. Or you want to have a server-centric view, which is at the resolver level or at the response level. So, there's obvious trade-off. It makes implementing mock a lot easier if we just do it at using a more server-focused view. But in terms of ergonomics and who actually needs this mock more, it is going to be client engineers. So trying to figure that out, I think, yeah.
Yeah, and then one of the big addendum I'll add to that is that the strong feedback was that this needs to work for within a query or within a fragment. Right now, the spec is written to mock the whole operation as a whole, and I'm right now reworking it to be sort of built more around being able to mock out certain parts of the operation. And maybe you kind of start off with your query as like every single thing is individually mocked, and you just kind of like gradually uncomment those things over time. So I'm trying to rework that, and I'll publish that once it's ready, and it's going to go into a gap. I feel pretty strongly that it should be client centric and that we shouldn't fiddle about with server stuff. I know that Netflix had an approach where they did it on the server side. I'm very happy for that to be like a competing, mocking proposal. That's the beauty of gaps, right? Is that we can have like various approaches, and maybe different companies pick the one that works best for them, even their architecture. I'm trying to get a implementation working with Apollo client on web. I feel like it's going to be doable with the link middleware type interface they have. So anyway, that's the update.
That's all the update we have.
Amazing. Do you guys have a next milestone you're working to? Like, what's the next set of problems you want to figure out?
So I think we want to iterate on I would say both of the specs. The idea is we would have the specs and then the reference implementation along with it. I would say in the next 2 months, both the semantic search and at mock should be part of community specs. That's I think that's where Pascal.
I think it's highly likely that these two specifications will somehow merge at one point, because I think they approach problems in a very different way, and I think both are worth solvable, and both have their issues. So I would say most likely there is going to be ideas from both in the end.
Very cool. I'm excited. I think this. I'm very happy that the working group has taken it in this direction. It seems to hit both a very immediate short-term need, and then also it seems like it's assembling the building blocks for a lot more really interesting stuff that can come. Cool. Any other thoughts on AI working group stuff, semantic introspection, mocking, before we move on? All right. We got one thing left to go. Martin, you want to give us an update on how we want to think about nullability WG?
Nullability working group, we want to archive the repository, and that's a good thing. It means after when did you start this effort, Alex? 5 years ago? 6?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I have 2020 in mind, so something like 6 years and a lot of discussions. We have a consensus on service capabilities plus this on-error request flag. And we haven't met, as a result, we haven't met in the last 6 months because everybody seems to agree on that. So we are suggesting to just archive this repository and do the work in the main working group. So unless there are any objections here, we'll hit that button. Alex, do you want to hit the button?
I
Who
don't
gets
think
to do
I
the
have
honors?
the permissions to hit the button, but someone else
Yeah.
can hit
I
it for
got
me.
it. I'll hit the button.
This has been a long time coming, and frankly, Martin and Benji and other folks brought it home. So good for them for doing the work.
What do they call it? The $1 billion error or something like that. We did our best.
I'll be waiting for my check. Thank you.
That's a bill, not a check, to be clear. But yes. Cool. Strong support. I whacked the button. Thank you for suggesting that we do that. Alex and Martin. I agree. It seems very much to be in the final stretches. Now it is upon us to actually make good on the direction that we've all agreed is the right direction. Okay, I reloaded our agenda and noticed that Mark has added our sort of final discussion as he wanted to dig into it. So Mark, I'll let you lead us there.
Yeah, am I cutting the queue, Benji? Were you adding something to the end as well?
No, please go for it.
All right. So you may all remember I just linked the spec proposal that was brought up last working group meeting, which, by the way, might want to be moved to stage X at this point. So as a refresher, the proposal was to be able to, in some way, reduce the overhead of having interface fields be applied to a type rather than like manually copying and pasting them. We would do something to magically have those interface fields be applied to types. And I think the feedback that we shared was that having some kind of magic compile time directive to do that for you as a compile step was a way that you could solve this. And now with the gaps repository that we have, I think we have a nice place to kind of put that. One piece that is maybe missing here, it's slightly awkward to talk about where exactly in the pipeline you would do this. And this was kind of like the suggestion from last meeting, which is we formalize the difference between the schema that you would write as a human and the schema that would actually, after it's all been crunched, the server would execute. And those are two different things. And either you might have like runtime functions to go and do things to extend types and whatnot for like generating cursor connection types, or you might have just literally like .graphql files that you run through some machinery to then do other things and then spit out other .graphql files that then go and actually get consumed by the server. And having the language to talk about the difference between those two things as a primitive would be very helpful for some of these gaps proposals. In addition, I think I'd also like to propose like an at compile only directive in the schema. And there's another proposal that where you can add directives to directives. I think that's in the works right now as a proposal. Hopefully that lands soon. And so I could see a gap specified for at inherit interface fields as a directive, but then that directive would also be tagged with at compile only or something like that. And then that's a signal to whatever tooling you use that this like directive disappears and doesn't go into the final schema, which does complicate issue 300 even more than it's already complicated. But yeah, I think that would be helpful. I bring this up for discussion. I think like probably like the thing that is hardest for me right now is the naming, and I'm just curious if anyone has ideas for like what the names for these primitives should be, and then I'm happy to kind of like go off and try and write something up as a spec proposal. And like as a bonus thing, it could be helpful to do the same thing with queries as well. We already have this with a runtime Apollo client will magically add dunder type name to most selection or to every selection set if you have that enabled, and that happens like outside of your trusted document hashing. You have to kind of like remember that happens, and so again, having that would be helpful. Having that distinction would be helpful between like the query you write as a human and the query that gets executed or hashed to enable other gaps like at mock, which will be removed before sending to the server. So anyway, I think this is like excellent timing. We've got this gaps repository now, and I think now is sort of maybe the right time to think about this. Yes, there's a lot of hands up. I think maybe Martin was first.
Yeah, I just want to say I support this 100%. In Apollo Kotlin, the first thing we do is we do an introspection query, and then we drop that into SDL. And if you read the spec today, this is not valid because SDL must not contain any Scala because the spec is written with SDL as I call it source SDL in mind, like the thing you give to as the GraphQL implementation. So, and vocabulary is super important. So if we had names to go with those, that would be super helpful. I currently use source schema for the thing you write and you pass to your implementation, and full schema for the thing that is then compiled all together and that you get from introspection. But curious what you all think.
Other thoughts?
I think Matt.
Yeah.
Oh, Stefan, go for it.
Good, man.
Yeah. So I did have a thought on name, the idea being like we're consuming something in the build, which I really like having a I wouldn't call it compile only. It's like it's consumed by compilation or it's because it's something that you are adding either potentially manually or like your GraphQL implementation is spitting out in the SDL that it initializes. And then it's like, okay, so this is what we start with. And then through series of transforms, if the directive is there at the end of your transforms, something has gone wrong.
Right. And so the idea of having a compile only directive, or we'll change the name of that, something that we all agree on. That could also be a signal to say that if you are seeing that something has gone wrong, and that should be bad, right?
Yeah. You haven't run the transform to get rid of this and add the fields that you actually need.
Yeah, so it guards against users accidentally executing a schema containing compile only directives.
Yeah, I really like that.
It should have been transformed out so that you know that, hey, like this, like server tooling that I have supports the at interface fields directive. Yeah. I guess Stephen next.
There you go. So, yeah, I love this, especially as we're moving towards using directives as something that can be like exposed in introspection. And I was wondering if you considered the opposite. So instead of compile only, at public or at runtime, and if that would like fit better with the status quo, where basically like right now in introspection there are no directives, and so basically they're all compile only, and so then existing schema directives are kind of grandfathered in, and then also maybe better fit into the fall into the pit of success in that you're only like publicly exposing directives intentionally.
I think that's technically probably the correct approach. The only issue or potential issue there is that whilst that is technically true, and we published that as a GitHub issue comment in like 1855 or whatever, whenever it was, everyone saw that and went, yeah, no, we're just going to use like print schema with directives or something. And so there are like a ton of people out there, right, including where we use the schema with the directives for things like authentication directives, and we do like scanning on that schema. And so they don't, I guess, like actual clients don't see those directives, but the like schema that we have in our schema registry will contain those directives, and we'll do computation based on that. So technically, yes, I agree with you. Maybe can we avoid breaking changes? I don't know. So like maybe I agree with you in theory. I don't know how we'd roll that out, but yeah, there's something there.
I was basically going to agree with Stephen. Stephen, you framed up the thing that was very similar to what I was going to say. And it seems like maybe this is slightly orthogonal to what you're talking about, but it does seem to me that the root issue here is we have one syntax that describes two very different kinds of things, and it's actually just the separating of those that's the really valuable part. And it's okay for there to be like concepts that are shared across both. But in particular, I really like the idea. I think, Stephen, you framed this word of a runtime schema. Like a runtime schema is a schema which is prepared to operate in the service. It's ready to go. There's no other steps. If you introspect it, you see literally exactly what it says on the tin. And if we had a human readable, AI readable format for precisely what introspection spits out, which is definitionally the runtime schema, um, then that subset obviously would not include extensions. It would not include a handful of other things that we've added. And then after you have runtime schema, then you have like ways in which you can have a schema first approach to building your service where you're human writing these schema files. So in my mind, it's like less about whether it's human written or machine written and more about like what exactly are you describing? Are you describing like input to a program that I think you used the word compile, that's a good word, like it's compiling down to the runtime schema, or is it the runtime schema itself? And then the fact that those are just like very similarly shaped in terms of the schema or the grammar that we've set up is, I don't know, maybe not bad, but certainly an opportunity for a little bit of confusion.
It is important, though, that
Yeah.
a runtime schema can be turned into a schema as well. So it is itself a source schema for tooling and stuff to be able to actually build it as a schema in memory and use it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Pascal.
Yeah, I'm not sure. So the introspection, we opted out of introspection for certain cases in the server where we essentially just return the SDL because that makes a lot of things easier. That's the way how we, for example, work around the issue 300 because we essentially do not return the runtime schema, but we return the, I think, source schema, you just called it. Maybe it would be worth considering something like this, that we could just have like a way to just get this generically, like the slash schema GraphQL or whatever to download it so that it's a bit more widely
Yeah,
spread out
I
in
agree.
the
Like that's clearly the overlap between what's going on here and then what we last talked about of the AI working group updates. There's like the need to have this very legible version of a runtime schema or a subset of the of that schema in a form that's very easy to read for both humans and models, um, which is just a separated concern from the ability to build that schema easily. Go ahead, Benji.
The main issue that I see with just exposing SDL through introspection, which we could do with like a query.sdl field, is that the SDL needs to be able to be updated with future syntax, which older clients may not support. So if clients come to depend on the SDL field, it would mean you can never adopt a newer syntax, whereas introspection itself is generally backwards compatible. So older tooling and older clients can continue to introspect a newer schema and they should continue to work. This is, of course, not the biggest of deals because introspection is generally used primarily at at build time rather than runtime. But it does mean that a change to your server, where, for example, you update to a newer version of the GraphQL library for security reasons or whatever, suddenly introduces support for a new syntax. And now you have to update all of your client tooling so that it supports that, which isn't something that's currently necessary. So I think it is worth exercising caution there. And it might be that we need this to be like a versioned thing where you can say, hey, give me the SDL and here are the capabilities that my client supports. It supports these types of syntax that have been added since this date or whatever.
Yeah, so one beautiful thing of having just a source schema is that you can cache it and you can multi-port stream it, so you don't have like any overhead. It's just a file which is cacheable by the CDN. So if 50,000 agents try to fetch your SDL file, it's always going to be the same. And it's just their context window that explodes and not your server. So I think I really enjoy the simplicity of having just a schema file there. I do see your points, Benji, that we suddenly make the every like now when we talk about SDL changes, we essentially treat them as well a lot simpler than query syntax changes because we do not really have to worry about too much about breaking the web. But the question is like, what's the main use case for it? And do we really worry about this too much? Because what I see is that you essentially want to have the schema file in one of your GraphQL IDs or in with your agent or whatever. And it's most often your own schema that you request this way.
Yeah, just to be clear here, my concerns rotate entirely around putting SDL directly into introspection. If you can store it in an external file, I'm all for that, and I would encourage you to do so. And you could even potentially use the capabilities system to indicate links to, hey, here's the SDL file for traditional syntax, here's the SDL file for syntax where this extra feature is supported or whatever, and you can just point to those URLs and fetch them.
Yeah, this should be actually just part of the GraphQL over HTTP spec specification. Just here's how you can host your schema / GraphQL schema.graphql or something like this.
Yeah, I mean, do you think about Benji, was your point actually advertising via SDL where the schema is, under which link you can get it?
Not under SDL, but under the
Sorry, under intro.
service, yeah, the service
Dedicated.
introspection,
Yeah.
because it doesn't matter what transport you're using, really. Like in this case, it would be like for GraphQL over HTTP, the GraphQL over HTTP server is your service. So its capabilities can include where that is. So it fits neatly in there. It doesn't need to be separately specified, other than saying what those keys are.
Yeah, I do see something like this as an option.
Right. So I'll kind of reference my comment. Like, is this a thing to work on in parallel, or do we see this as like a foundational problem to solve before we can tackle like at compile only, basically, and what we do there?
It seems foundational to me, although I also want to be like very careful about dramatically expanding the set of stuff we have to figure out in order to get to an end goal. So I think we can like make incremental progress here. Um, the element of this, and like to just again parrot what Stephen was saying, like the element of this that I actually think is most interesting is less the compile only and more the like runtime subset. Like the fact that we continuously tweak the grammar of the SDL is bad if your goal is to like build a tooling ecosystem, like train a bunch of models that know how to read SDL and then set them loose. And then like a few months later, we change the grammar of the SDL. That's probably a bad thing. But I suspect the vast majority of what the schema has in it, or the subset of the SDL that describes runtime schemas, is actually probably very stable. I'm sure we will keep iterating it over time as GraphQL itself evolves. But if the main foundational thing ends up being I've isolated the subset that never changes to describe runtime schemas so that this other stuff over here, we can have a little bit more license to expand a little bit more freely because the kind of domain of tools that rely on it are more resilient to changes over time. That that seems like both a very good foundational change and also something that's like not blocking. Like as soon as we figure it out, it just adds resiliency to the system.
So you're saying we could even potentially have like whole classes of syntax which are only valid in the like source schemas and not the runtime schemas, and
Yeah,
that
like I'm
version.
totally
Yeah, okay, that makes
like
sense.
right now we have a handful of root grammars that we describe in the overall grammar doc. And we just have sort of one that actually we kind of do have two already. Like there's the document that describes one without extensions and one with them. So I think we already saw this problem coming and it's just not as crisp as it could be, and it doesn't really have a clear name. Um, and so that might be double G gap. I like that.
Yeah. So this doesn't seem incompatible. I get GraphQL. Okay, I see what you're saying with that. This doesn't seem like massively incompatible then. But yeah, I guess I'm curious what Matt has to say.
In practice, I think that this is already how, at least at Meta, how things work. Like the spec describes, oh, you must not define this string scalar. You must have all interfaces defined. You must have like overlapping in the schema that you're using. You must have these overlapping, like when you see a spread bubble, like there's all kinds of rules that we just ignore entirely. Like our schema is invalid. We have documents that are invalid schema. They're proper schema syntax, but they are a document that is invalid. And we frequently get like, especially newcomers to the team being like, I'm looking at this with this tool and it's yelling at me that I can't compile the schema because it's invalid. And it's like, yeah, it's because it's a partial piece that's representing like this one purpose and it's meant to be included in a broader whole, which we only get to after like running our build pipeline to actually producing what you need at the end. And even what we have at the end in the client side view is not necessarily a valid schema. But which is to say, like, it would be really helpful to have that explicitly split out and have the ability to add, a module system to schemas, to the SDL syntax, and add, a static fields on types that are really, query or mutation root fields, but directly on the type, or like things like that. It'd be super duper valuable for us to have that and just say, and this needs to compile back to a runtime schema at the end. Like this is how you translate this to a runtime schema. Super valuable.
Would it be helpful to have some kind of marker to signal to the robots that this is like actually a source schema and not a what are we calling it, a runtime schema, just so that if they are like crunching it and taking it into context in future, either it's like a different file extension or some directive at the top of the file, or
I'd love if that was basically a module keyword or something like that.
Okay, I was thinking we just like continue to overload the the current thing we have with everything is in the everything is lexible by the single GraphQL lexiclass. But I guess I'll I wrote up what I had in mind for this in that link, which is in the agenda. So if you want a sneak preview of what's coming, I guess it's that. There's obviously a lot of stuff to finesse here. I'm still not 100% sure Lee, how what you were saying is incompatible with this idea of like a at compile only directive. I'm still trying to like completely understand what like where we're differing. It sounds as though we're kind of coming at this from the same place.
I don't think they're incompatible at all. My hope is that by first isolating out the runtime only, like here's the subset of schema that just describes a schema. Like if you were to ask for introspection, but in the form of a SDL file, as many have mentioned, that's like heavily cacheable, etc. There's some subset of grammar that describes that. And then everything outside of that grammar is like compile only, I guess. Like what does it mean to be an extension if not to assume some sort of like compilation step will occur? And so if that's the case, then just to sort of like give you more fuel for fodder of if the intent is to define some subset of things that are compile only, what grammar do you need, or like what do you need to be explicit about? And it could be the fact that it's like, okay, I have this is a directive which does nothing to the runtime schema, but does inform something very important for compilation. This is actually very root. Maybe it's part of issue 300. But this idea of like how do you round trip directives through the whole system has come up many, many times. And I think that's hopefully something that will be made easier and not harder as we do it. So I think maybe it truly just is literally issue 300 we're all coming back to now a bazillion years later. Where the set of concepts that need to be able to be represented in a runtime schema, we need to be able to represent through introspection, through SDL. And then there's more things that we do not need to represent through introspection, and those do not have to be solved by issue 300. Maybe another way to frame that is hopefully by figuring this out, issue 300 gets easier, not harder.
And to clarify, I'm specifically thinking I'm just going to use the example of at include interface fields, which is a thing you would write in your human written schema, but would not be in the runtime schema. The runtime schema would just have the fields directly on the type, but that would not, we wouldn't even want that to be exposed through introspection or a .sdl file.
Yeah.
So at least for that like set of issues, like I don't care about issue 300.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a good thing, right? It scopes issue 300 in a way that's important that I think before we didn't have like a clear way to describe.
Yeah, I guess the one thing is like at least for the like initial small scope of things I care about, I don't feel blocked by issue 300, but I could be wrong.
Awesome. Mark, any other input you want on this?
No, I think I have enough to go off of now. So I appreciate all that discussion. Thank you.
All right, friends. I think we've made it to the end of our agenda. Thank you all for the good conversations. We've got a handful of things to do next. I'll reiterate some of them. A, make sure you submit your CFPs for GraphQL Conf. They're only open for a few more days. B, if you're interested in digging deep into incremental delivery, show up again in a couple of weeks. Grant program, if it's relevant, take a look. And did I miss any of the other ones? Golden Path next week. Thank you, Benji, for that reminder. Okay, friends, we'll wrap it there. Thanks so much. See y'all soon.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.